Lorraine. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We're just going to wait a minute or so. It normally takes people time to join, but I can see we've got attendees flooding into the session. Just give it 30 seconds. Kim, if I can ask you to just check if Ziad has got any issues joining.
Sure.
All right, I think let's kick off and get this Digital Insights, the second in a series, kicked off. So firstly, welcome to all those of you that are joining this morning, and also to those of you that might be listening to the recording. So good morning to all, and a welcome from Bepesa. We've got a great panel lined up for this morning's call, and I'm personally really looking forward to the session. So as we kick off the new year, a great new year in my opinion. I think we've got a lot to look forward to, and there's certainly a lot of excitement in the industry, especially when it comes to technology, when it comes to the use of digital technologies. And so we're going to get into the session today, and I'm going to be handing over to Andy Saul, the CEO of Bepesa, in the next couple of seconds. Andy will give us an overview of Bepesa, our position currently, and then our plans for 2021. And then we're going to go straight into an introduction of the panel members. That should take us down to about the half-hour mark. And then we're going to go into a very open discussion around these trends that we believe are going to be impacting South Africa in this year. Please feel free at any time to post questions. We will be responding to those questions during that open discussion. And then right at the end, I'm going to hand back to Andy, and Andy will bring us in for a landing at the end of the webinar. So with that, welcome again to everyone, and I'll hand over to Andy.
Neville, thanks very much. And if I can just echo Neville's welcome to the panelists, and a huge thank you to you for taking your time out to commit to this session, and also to all the participants, with more coming in all the time. Just a little bit about Bepesa and setting some context for these Digital Insights series that Neville is running. Bepesa is the industry body and trade association for the global business services sector. So broadly speaking, that covers traditionally call centers and non-voice services as well in an outsourcing mode, BPO and captive. It also, though, focuses on shared services, and particularly niche shared services. So those would be legal services, finance and accounting, digital marketing, and there are others. And increasingly, as we've come to understand the market better, the opportunity for digital and IT outsourced services has also been presenting itself in a larger and larger way. Now, as Neville said, we really are in a state of digital transformation across the globe, across sectors, and as a country shifting into the digital economy as fast as we possibly can. So these insight sessions are really relevant to all of us, not just to Bapesa and what we focus on. You can read the balance in the slide there, but Bapesa is set up essentially with partners and members to drive growth for its members in the domestic and international market, to facilitate the supply of skills to support that growth sustainably, and to make sure that these growth opportunities are shared inclusively from small to large organizations across the country, domestic and internationally owned companies, and for all people. Thanks, Neville. If you can move on. In this slide, we've tried to reflect 2020, which is no doubt a shared experience for everyone on the call. It was really defined by the pandemic and the experience through lockdown and how everybody responded and reacted. Bapesa really played three roles, which it will continue to do in a slightly nuanced way in 2021. So one of the key roles is engaging with government, making sure that at a regulatory level, sectors like the GBS sector can continue to operate as they do today and as they have done throughout lockdown. It's really important, and it sends out a clear message to the global markets that South Africa is resilient, reliable, and continues to provide service uninterrupted. Bapesa also, though, supports government in reporting on progress on COVID compliance, and that information and intelligence is used to help navigate and inform regulations and prioritize sectors and understand where our challenges and blockages lie and help to resolve those. Key, though, is how we collaborate as business, and that's what these sessions are also aimed at doing, is getting business leaders, thought leaders, experts in their fields to share thinking and collectively help each other move forward, solve the problems, and get back onto a growth path. And finally, the third element is supporting the sector in general, providing advisory support, access to information, whatever it takes, working together to develop industry-specific protocols so that this broad-based sector can continue to operate safely for its staff, effectively for its clients, and it can make that contribution that's expected of us. Thanks, Neville. But we really are here today talking about digital trends and insights looking forward. And what this chart shows is the journey that this sector has been on. And it had a really good growth rate that got drastically disrupted, as you can see, during 2020. But what's most encouraging is that as we start 2021, and in fact going back into the back end of 2020, the sights and signals of growth were back again. And so we really are focusing on the recovery, the reconstruction, and the return to growth of this particular sector, which was spared much of the carnage of many other sectors, fortunately, which also found new services, new opportunity, and new demand. But like all other sectors of the economy, is drastically impacted by these trends that we're going to be talking about and need to factor that into our future. But it's a positive outlook. It's a sector that can contribute to the economic recovery, can add jobs where we desperately need them. And these jobs are typically for young people who've been excluded. But we need to respond to the trends that you're going to hear about. We need to embrace the technologies available to us, and we need to learn to use them productively and competitively. Thanks, Neville. So when we focus today's conversation on digital insights and trends, I really want you to zoom in and think about that one area of the sunbeam diagram that you can see there, which is this huge opportunity, not just in the domestic market, but certainly in the offshore market as well, for a range of digital services, IT services. And I'm hoping that the conversation will start to shed more light on our capabilities, on our thinking, on our plans for the future, on the challenges that affect us. But if we get it right, together with these other areas, we should be looking at growth and not decline. We should be looking at innovation and not stagnation. And we should be looking at increasing our competitiveness and not playing catch up. So I'm going to stop there, Neville, and hand back to you to introduce the panelists and kick off the session with one question to ask ourselves. And do we believe that South Africa can really, over time, attain that status of being a leader in the delivery of IT outsourcing and digital services, and upon what foundation? So thanks very much. Looking forward to today's session. Over to you and the panelists.
Thank you, Andy. So I'm really excited because we've got a great team of panelists that have joined us this morning. And I'm going to introduce each of them and give them an opportunity to give their views in terms of the trends that they are seeing. And first up, we have Ziad Suleiman. Ziad is a director and the chief operating officer for IBM South Africa. He joined IBM 11 years ago and has been integral in the growth and development of the IBM business in the region. Ziad has joint responsibility for the overall business ops at IBM and is responsible for strategy, transformation, special projects, and investments. Ziad serves on the IBM South Africa Board of Directors, ExCo, as well as important governing councils, such as being the chairperson of the Social and Ethics Committee and disciplinary boards. And then I have to say, I cut this thing short because Ziad is also involved in so many initiatives that I didn't have time and I didn't have the space on this slide. But welcome, Ziad. I'm very excited to have you on the call. And I'm going to just hand over to you and get your insights on, what do you believe the trends are that Business South Africa needs to be aware of and needs to be putting their focus on for this year?
So good morning, everybody, and thank you, Neville, for the invitation. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you this morning. I think when we look at the direct question around the trends and the trajectory of where we're heading, there are a number of different elements that need to be considered. So when we look at the current challenges around COVID, the challenge of the economy, the challenge of health, the challenge of people being mobile and people taking risks, when we look at the fiscus position, when we look at the investment profile and what people are doing, there are a number of permutations which nobody has certainty on. And I think to a large extent that is predicated. Many aspects of society are moving around at such a pace that very few people feel they have control over. However, when there is risk and when there is challenge, there's always opportunity. And the key question that we need to answer as leaders of basically any type of enterprise, whether it be a small enterprise or a large enterprise, is, are we shifting our mindset and are we moving towards a mindset of digital, which would enable our customer base and our people to be attractive in terms of the value proposition? And what I mean by that is the people being attractive with the right skills, but then equally the business having the right value proposition in terms of products and services. So when I look at the trajectory, for me, I think data is probably the key, right, which is linked to AI and security. And ultimately, all of these types of aspects fall under the banner of hybrid cloud. And I think that's extremely important. Now, people will have a digital play at different levels within their organization. And depending on the size and the importance of digital in your business, you will either scale or downscale, at a certain rate. Now, when I say downscale, I don't mean downscaling digital. I mean downscaling operations which are ineffective and making them more digital. So for me, I think hybrid cloud linked to AI and data and security is fundamental. But together with that, you do need the skills and allowing people to grow into that domain so that they do well. There are many other aspects of technology which we could speak about, but I think we'll leave that as we progress the discussion. I'll leave you with three final things before we move on to the next person. The first is we have to remain relevant and essential, both as people and as a business. So whatever that takes, it is a prerogative. The second thing is that we have to think about growth and sustainability, not only for our individual businesses, but also for the benefit of society and the country. And the third thing is, how do we make sure that we are providing the right products and services which actually are required by people? So it links back into the point around being essential, but I see it as being a separate point. Neville, I'll pass back to you and we'll pick up the discussion as we progress. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Sinead. Ziad, we're going to get back to some of these very interesting points that you've made. Next up, we've got Mark Skuman that joins us from Genesis Consulting Analytics. And Mark is the principal in charge, and he leads the Center of Excellence at Genesis Analytics, the largest economics-based consultancy in Africa. Mark is currently a technical advisor to Uganda's Presidential Task Force on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where he is co-creating the country's national 4IR strategy. He is coordinating the formulation of a digital economy master plan for South Africa with government, private sector, and labor, where digitally traded services has been identified as a priority for growing jobs in the digital economy. So welcome, Mark, and I'm very pleased to have you on this panel. I think you have some very interesting takes given the area that you are focused in at a government level. You know, maybe you can speak to the trends that you are seeing, and I think also maybe to some of the challenges that you think we face in South Africa in this time.
Great, thanks Neville, and good morning to everyone. It's great to be part of this discussion. I wanted to talk about one sort of mega trend, which I think is, funny enough, isn't even about kind of high tech, frontier tech innovation, but which I think is quite transformational for the landscape of digital services in South Africa and elsewhere. And it's really about the rise of a new generation of digital consumers that I think we can expect in the next couple of years. Now, I'm not here talking about a new generation in the sense of this crop of young people who are coming up because of the youth wave. In fact, what I'm talking about is the fact that amazingly, you know, as we stand currently today, only about half of the population in South Africa actually regularly uses the internet. It's quite a shocking statistic. But what it means and why it's so important, I think, is it really represents a massive latent digital demand that's waiting to be unlocked in the segment. And I think we can expect this picture to change quite significantly in the next 3 years. So we know that, you know, the Competition Commission has been clamping down on mobile data pricing, working with MNOs like Vodacom and MTN to make mobile data cheaper. We at Genesis have been working closely with the presidency on a really exciting initiative, which is going to massively scale up fast and affordable broadband connections, particularly among the lower income household segments in South Africa. So we're targeting about 1 million new households being connected over the next year, and up to about 4 million households being connected to fast, affordable broadband over the next 5 years. And I think why this is so exciting is because it constitutes a really large increase in the addressable market for digital services and a huge boost in digital demand in South Africa. So, you know, I think from a commercial perspective, it's really promising, but we do have to recognize that these are a different type of consumer with their own requirements. So to date in South Africa, a lot of the digital services have largely been designed to cater for a relatively affluent and digitally savvy middle-class consumer market. But as providers and operators, you know, wanting to tap into this growing mass market, which is increasingly coming online, I think we need to think about three things from a commercial perspective. So the first is that this is an extremely cost-sensitive market segment, and we need to be thinking about moving to digital channels that are both quick and cheap to deploy from an operator perspective, but more importantly, that don't incur large costs for the consumer. So I think we can expect to see in this segment a bit of a movement away from very data-heavy web channels and apps that require the customer to use a lot of data to download them, to very low data channels that still offer significant functionality. Probably the most promising one that I've been working on in the space is the simple WhatsApp chatbot, which is super versatile and it can fulfill many functions. I mean, many of the operators on this call have probably been using chatbots as one of the channels in their customer support suite. But there's a number of other ways that people are starting to use chatbots over platforms like WhatsApp for people to be able to apply for products and services, to deliver automated advice, and all kinds of intelligent messaging solutions. What's so exciting about them is that they are really quick and cheap to set up and scale from an operator perspective. So at Genesis, we've actually developed our own WhatsApp chatbot in-house, and we offer the service to our clients. The on-ramp period is a few weeks, from concept through to deployment. It's quite cheap to operate. You're looking at about 5 cents a message sent and received by the bot. And it's super easy to scale. I mean, scaling up doesn't require looking in the market to hire, customer support agents. So I think this movement towards, dynamic, functional, but low cost digital channels, particularly for this market segment, will be very important. I think the other thing to consider is that the pricing model for digital services may have to change. The segment is quite accustomed to pay-as-you-go pricing. They don't have a lot of disposable income to put towards monthly subscriptions, and they don't necessarily have the credit record to support contracts. So even internet service providers, which are almost always a month-to-month contract, are looking at alternative billing models for this segment of the market, vouchers that people can buy in communities to top up their balance when they need it. And I think digital service providers and operators will have to start thinking about the same. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is, from a commercial perspective, the fact that this massive increase in internet connectivity will also mean that it's a new raw talent pool is going to become available that's going to be much bigger before. Largely because we aren't going to be purely reliant on staff traveling from their homes into contact centers, because they would potentially have the ability to work virtually from home. So we know AWS is currently in the process of recruiting about 3,000 virtual customer support agents. And one of the non-negotiable requirements is that people have a fixed fiber connection of at least 10 megabits per second. I mean, many of the operators on this call have probably already been experimenting with some hybrid virtual physical operating models during COVID. And I think, those who can make an early move to more virtual operating models can stand to gain significantly by being able to scale up more easily through tapping into this raw talent pool. Let me leave it at there, Neville. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Some very interesting points that you made there. Thank you for that. So next up is Laurent Leclerc, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Merchants. Has enjoyed an ICT career spanning 3 decades. I thought that was really impressive, and then I realized I've been in it for 4 decades. So, but anyway, the last 13 years, Laurent has occupied various C-suite positions. His approach to technology has always been through the lens of human potential, believing that technology should always serve humans and not the other way around. His passion lies in building high-performance cultures and creating space for people to achieve their full potential. I can actually vouch for that, having experience and as a colleague. And also the next statement, where he's particularly skilled at taking on difficult situations and turning these into tangible and sustainable opportunities. So there again, I mean, I know Laurent has been involved in many turnaround actions. But Laurent, welcome to this call. Happy to have you on the call. I know you've had lots of experience on the cutting face of, technology, where you have to be delivering to the user, the end user, and serving them with technology and delivering technology within a business context. So happy to have you on the call, and interested to hear what your views are on the trends that we face in this year.
Thanks very much, Neville, and good morning, everyone. It's a great way to start the year, to kick off the year, to be part of this kind of discussion and panel. For me, first off, there've been a lot of articles and things written about, the bots are coming. The bots are coming, and they're going to be taking over people's jobs. If you take a step back and look at it practically, I think it's been the other way around for more than 10 years. I think people have been taking over bots' jobs for far too long, and a lot of people have become accustomed to being on autopilot. and just doing mundane things. And I think a lot of people, and I'm often quite critical of our own workforce and my team and other teams that I've led with regards to bring your brain to work. My expectation is come to work and think and add value on business's terms. So I think for me, one of the things that is going to be quite interesting for us to look at as a country, and there was a question asked earlier around, as leaders, can we position South Africa on the forefront? I think we're pretty much already there. I mean, I think we've got all the ingredients. We were able to make up a superb fruit salad to offer the globe and offer the world. We've just got to get a couple of things right, and it starts with education. One of my big bugbears is I look at, I've got a 7-year-old at home, and I look at the education system, and it just astounds me that we're still educating people and young folks for a past workforce and a past life and a bygone era. And we've really got to tackle that head on. And I think, so that's education. If I look at enterprise, we do the same thing as organizations. We recruit, we haven't really aggressively changed the way we recruit and the roles we recruit for. So there's a mindset shift that needs to happen. I think it was mentioned previously, where we've got to think about why we do things and how we do them, and with a future view in mind. So recruitment and how we recruit is also important to me. And you look at the evidence in social media, right? It always astounds me that you've got these world leaders and global thought leaders that really struggle when they write their own tweets or write their own posts. They really struggle with English and really struggle with grammar and spelling, for that matter. And the reality of it is nobody cares as long as you can code, right? And that's the mentality I think that we're starting to see in the world. In terms of the pandemic, we had a kind of an exec meeting a couple of days ago, and we were talking about last year and what that's meant for us. And I think the reality of the pandemic is that it's actually, what it's done is it's accelerated execution of a lot of things that we already knew. We just thought we had time. And what the pandemic's done is it's set the cat among the pigeons with regards to individuals and organizations really having to catch a wake up and do the things that have been the right things to do for many years already. And we've just been dragging our feet about it. And how that's manifested itself is, our workforce has become extremely fluid, in fact, completely fluid. And managing and understanding a fluid workforce is absolutely the way of the future as we understand it. For me, one of the technology, when we speak about trends, one of the things that I'm keeping a very close watch on is 5G. And I think it was also mentioned before, how people work from home, work in a fluid manner, work from anywhere, are able to access, training online easily, are not paying an arm and a leg for that connectivity from a data perspective. And really, there are two flavors of 5G that become quite interesting. The one is public 5G, and we've started to see a lot of noise around that rollout. The other one that's more interesting to companies is enterprise 5G, and what that means from a, breaking completely away from a brick and mortar mentality to really driving fluidity in the workforce. From a tech perspective, the other one that is quite interesting to us is intelligent automation. I mean, I think RPA. A lot of people made noise around RPA probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and very quickly realized that RPA has its limitations with regards to the value it can add. It's diminishing returns over a very quick period of time, and I think the next wave is to take that to the next level and really to augment the human condition. You want people to be freed up to think and add value on businesses' terms and drive the client experience. You've got to break their them being shackled to the mundane, which quite frankly can be handled by technology and a solid digital strategy, so that they can drive the human experience, on that basis. Back to you, Neville.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Laurent. Appreciate that. We're going to get back to some of these points that you made. Certainly the one around education is very interesting. So we might just dig into that one a little bit. But next up, last, certainly not least, Kim Schulze, the Head of Digital Advisory Services at Microsoft South Africa. Kim is responsible for leading a team of digital architects who support customers across various industries to understand and articulate their digital transformation journeys. Kim has more than 25 years of experience in business across various industries, together with a deep understanding of technology and digital architecture. Kim assists organizations to envision the innovation and business possibilities with today's technology and build a journey towards the vision, while also ensuring that they realize the full value of their investments. So welcome to the panel, Kim, and I'm very interested to hear your take on the industry or the trends that you see companies out there are latching onto, and specifically the trends that will make a difference in this next year. So if you can just talk to us about the practical implications of trends in South Africa.
Sure, thanks Neville, and hello everybody. Thanks for inviting me to this event, and it's also great to chat to all of you. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So I'm going to talk about 3 phases that we're currently experiencing, 4 principles, and 3 elements to unlock value during this period. So 3 phases really center around how we dealt with this pandemic as organizations. Every single company has had to be able to respond, recover, and reimagine their business during this time. And you had to do all those 3 phases concurrently. So responding is when we all went into lockdown. You know, we all had to suddenly find a way to establish a level of business continuity. And with that came our ability to first adopt software like Zoom and Teams in order to establish continuity and be able to collaborate between each other in the organization and also with our customers. So that level of business continuity was super important as part of the respond phase. And many organizations are still continuing to respond to the situation. The next part of the phase is the recover phase. This is where we start to look at what does our business look like in this new normal? How are we going to start recovering and ensuring that we maintain revenue streams and are able to stay focused on our customers and delivering a service? And this recover phase also continues today alongside with the respond phases. Organizations are in different places. And the third phase is about reimagining your organization. That's when really the new normal has started to set in and you've started to establish new capabilities and reimagine your business through the use of technology. All 3 of these phases are super important to take into consideration because at the end of the day, this stuff is actually enabled through digital capabilities. Our CEO, Satya Nadella, said that we've seen pretty much 2 years worth of digital transformation in a period of 2 to 3 months during this COVID pandemic. Then I want to get to the 4 principles in order to make these 3 phases possible. So you have to adopt the principles of agility, being able to rapidly respond to your customers' changing needs and the market demands. You have to be agile enough to transform your business to ensure that you're capable of delivering your products and services through new and unique channels and new digital channels. The second principle is centered around the experience economy. That's about creating new experiences for both your customers as well as your employees. And that means that you have to delight them and differentiate the products and services that you're offering through those experiences. And it's more difficult to do that through digital channels. You have to maintain another level of communication. You have to maintain another level of insight in terms of what your customers are requiring in order to be satisfied. And that requires access to data and build what we call intelligent loops or digital loops in order to actually learn from the experiences as well. You have to also create those experiences for your employees so that at the end of the day, they are able to deliver those experiences to your end customers. The third principle is around culture. Your organization has to adopt and embrace what we call a digital culture, where digital is first and new digital channels will be enabled. The digital culture is super important because the new norms dictate that we cannot do things in the same way. And that requires a different level of attention on its own. And then the fourth principle is the concept of value nets. That means we cannot exist as an island. Every organization has to be surrounded by an ecosystem of partners, service providers, customers, the logistics providers, in order to actually be successful in this pandemic and in the new normal. So whether it's exploring new avenues of delivering your products and services, there's obviously been a huge increase in the use of courier services in terms of delivering goods, but also the digital channels that you need to make use of in order to deliver your products and services. Simple examples, and with everybody going digital, there's been a massive increase in obviously digital payment channels. People are not drawing cash anymore. There's been something like a 60% reduction in cash withdrawals at ATMs over this last 12 months. So those are 4 key principles. Now, what are the 3 elements that you need to actually end up unlocking all of this? Well, the first thing is you do need a solid digital platform to actually enable this, whether it be the intelligent cloud, the intelligent edge, a modern workplace or collaboration space, and business applications in order to actually enable the digital capability. That requires a level of investment, but guess what? It's not like it was 10 years ago. Today, all organizations have got access to enterprise class type of capability through the cloud and the services that it has to offer. It's not exclusive anymore, and that's the beauty of the digital transformation era. Its costs have come down significantly. The second element to unlock this is having the right approach in terms of unpacking and envisioning what you want to see your business do and how you want to see your business evolve and capabilities you have to build. So you have to do rapid envisioning, ensuring that you do design thinking in order to put people at the center of the solutions and the capabilities that you're producing. And the third, which is a bit of a repetition of one of the principles, is you have to have that digital culture. That means a different mindset, a different way employees are doing their work, and obviously ultimately using the digital capability before anything else. Thanks, Neville. Back to you.
Well, thank you, Kim. That seems to have solved all the problems that we might be experiencing out there. So we've got the phases, the principles, the elements. I think we're going to get into some of these. I'm going to stop sharing the slides because the next area that we're going to get into is we're going to discuss a couple of these areas. I've made notes, so hopefully I can read my handwriting. But I think the first one that I just wanted to discuss, because I think it's a follow-on from the last webinar that we had, which was around digital skills and digital skills development. I think this is a critical requirement. And then in conjunction with that, I think it was you, Mark, that mentioned employment and how we actually, or how organizations are employing digital skills. So Ziad, I know you mentioned this, but can we just get into a little bit of a discussion around, what you see on the last webinar that we had, where the recording is available. We discussed this dynamic of skills being developed on the one hand. There's a need within the industry, but there's a challenge in job placements and finding those roles and requirements. And it almost feels like there's a disconnect between the supply side and the demand side. And if we can just maybe, we don't have a lot of time, but if we can just get into a little bit of that, when you think of skill development, Ziad, and I know you head this up within the PPGI, how do you see this? What are the challenges and what are the quick fixes, if we're thinking about the next year?
Yeah, well, thanks very much. It's always an interesting question because when you look at skills, you're developing skills for a current need, but also with the trajectory of what's still to come, right? And the issue is, how do you develop a pipeline of current need, but also make sure that people are upskilled and reskilled, and the skills continuously are refreshed in order to meet your customer demand and what the market requirements are. So in finding that balance, the current skill requirement is really based on what your current business value proposition is, what the digital trends are, how do you utilize technology to become far more efficient, how do you take out cost, and how do you become more optimal in your delivery? How do you better utilize your resources so that they can, have the touch points with your customers where more empathy is required, where more, understanding is required, where more logic is required, where more relationships are required. All of those things are essential and certainly do not replace and are not replaced by technology. So the issue around skills is utilizing your current day skills to have those touch points in order to grow your business, but utilizing technology to make them more efficient and your business more efficient in delivering a better value proposition for your customer. That's the first part. The second part is, as we look at the trends, and we've started talking about trends, and I like the way you've set up the call because it talks about what is happening now, but also where are we heading, right? And in analyzing where are we heading in the short term, whether it be 1 year or 3 years, every business needs an outlook in terms of, well, if we are heading there, then ultimately what skills are required in order for me to be competitive in that space or in that era? And then the question is, how do I enable my workforce to have the right skills so that they are productive and they are easily differentiated in the market as being better now and in the future? And it's really understanding that data and developing for that specific need. I can talk much more about this, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And then, Laurent, you mentioned also the education, and I think we can all agree that there's a lag between the curricula that are being set up, and by the time those students graduate, they're stepping into a job, and they hope to step into a job where they are relevant, and then we find that we require work readiness programs. We need retraining, reskilling, and all these type of things. Have you got an idea of how we bring those two closer together so that skill development is more relevant and more appropriate to the opportunities that are going to exist, and understanding that, learning cycles post-school, take 3 to 4 year cycles, at the longest level. And so how do we make sure that we get better at this, but also the recruitment process, where the traditional way of recruiting was a graduate, and yet that might not be the best skill for the role. So if you can just talk a little bit into that, and then we'll move on from there.
I think, this is what you've just mentioned is one of the major reasons I decided to take up this role within the BPO industry, within merchants, is because if we look at the BPO industry and the contact center industry, we create employment for individuals who eventually want to end up doing magnificent things for our country and for the planet. And if you look at the attrition levels in the BPO industry and in contact centers, it's quite high. And, people cycle in and out, of our types of businesses. And our role really as employers is to equip these individuals, and apologies for the background noise, someone's using a weed eater, just to create these opportunities and to make sure that for the 2 or 3 years that these individuals, these young folk, that are between the age of 19 and 21, 22, once they've done completed their tenure with us, they are completely equipped. And I think there's a huge role, as an enterprise, I think there's a massive role for us to play with regards to making sure that these young individuals that have come out of the education system understand what employment means and what our country needs and the skills that they need to hone in on in order to remain relevant ongoing throughout their career. So there's a lot of things we're doing. I don't think we're doing enough. That if I look across organizations, I don't think anybody's doing enough, because this is a significant and massive problem. The second thing for me is to get involved. One of the big things for us is to start generating a pipeline of talent while these individuals are still in high school. So getting involved with the high schools, understanding, the kind of conversations and skills that need to be embedded, working with these education institutions is also quite important. And once again, I don't think enough has been done. So getting on the front foot is absolutely critical, and seeing ourselves in the BPO industry as really playing a key role in setting up the future workforce of our country is something that we need to look at ourselves through that lens.
Yeah, and I think just to that point, I mean, Bepesa is involved in a number of projects where it is our intent to better connect the supply and the demand side and make sure that there's a seamless line of communication and of information and data, and working with our partners, Arambi and the DTIC on the one hand, on the development side, and on the supply side. I think this is something that is a challenge, and we will work on this, and together with the industry, I think we'll make progress in this area. Mark, you mentioned something that really resonated with me, and that was quite interesting, is that as products that are being delivered by organizations through digital channels are being evolved and being developed, they are being developed for a certain segment of the market. And if we provide more access, or more access becomes available to the 1 million over the next year and the 5 million over the next 5 years, just in that one area, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more, as mobile technologies evolve. Are you seeing successes in this area of alternate type products that are being developed that can serve as examples of these types of products that you were referring to?
Thanks, Neville. Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and an egg problem, I suppose, in the sense that this mass market segment, although they don't have much spending power, there's a lot of volume. So that's where the commercial opportunity lies. But for a lot of the digital service providers in South Africa, it's been easier to target the kind of middle and higher income segments, because although there's less volume, there's more spending power there. So it does kind of make sense that's where it started, but for sure the mass market is the next frontier of where the commercial opportunity exists. In terms of successful business models, I think internet service providers and fiber network operators are a great example of this, because they've been evolving so quickly in South Africa. So if we look at fiber network operators, fiber to the home infrastructure, and the internet service providers that latch onto that, of course, they started with the leafy suburbs. Even though it's more expensive to dig fiber trenches there, the spending power of those households is quite large. So they've almost kind of covered that opportunity. And they're now looking at how to deploy fiber or other, for example, Wi-Fi options into townships and other lower income communities in South Africa. Vumatel's had some early success in actually doing fiber connections to the home in township communities at a price point of around about 300 to 400 Rand a month for a 10 megabit per second line. And then a handful of examples of successful Wi-Fi providers, so public Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi to the home through a voucher model. So community members can go to their spaza shop where they buy airtime recharge vouchers, and they can actually buy vouchers for using that Wi-Fi hotspot. Some of these models have worked out to be profitable, others less so. Some of them are working on a freemium kind of model where there's advertising that the consumer has to watch to access the service, and that's how the company makes money. So I think it's an emerging space, one that holds a lot of promise, but it's one that the private sector in South Africa has not made a massive effort to expand into, and really, where the next kind of frontier of opportunity is going to be.
All right, thanks, Mark. Kim, I wanted to because you gave us a very nice overview. I'm assuming that you've had some very good success and experience in working with some companies over the last year. I wanted to just hone in on the mention that you did around culture, mindset, and if you can just give some examples of companies where you've seen the impact of culture either way.
Yeah, so culture is all about embracing the concept of being agile, adjusting rapidly to the changing market needs. And digital culture specifically is around being agile through the use of technology. And what we found is organizations that have been resistant to change and being resistant to using new digital channels actually cease to exist. You really have to reimagine your business and your organization, putting the customer in the center and designing your capabilities and your services and offerings and the products you're going to deliver using digital channels. You have to use data to make informed decision making. This is all about culture, digital culture. It's foreign to many organizations. Some organizations that we've dealt with, the entire business has been eroded literally because of COVID-19. Look at the transport industry, for example. The first couple of months was really hard on the transport industry, and so some of the operators in that regard that we engaged with, who made decisions or recommendations that they should actually embrace the opportunity to maybe use their real estate for different purposes, So create digital capability to allow for better collaboration between entities, ensuring that you maybe instead of, and I'm going to use this as an example, let's say, for example, using Gautrain stations, not to catch a train, but potentially to set up safe meetings in safe meeting rooms, as an example, enabling collaboration. So in other words, start to rethink your business model and your purpose. And that's super difficult, and it does require digging deep. It does require an executive desire to drive that sort of change. But the most important thing there for me is when you embark on this, executive level sponsorship, and certainly use design thinking to actually come up with solutions that center around people's needs and the market's wants.
Yeah, does anyone else on the panel want to respond to that or add to that?
Yeah, so I've got a comment to the culture, dialogue. For me, I think what Kim is saying is absolutely fundamental. You do need an uptake. In order to drive forward a business, you need to make sure that every part of your business is singing together, right? If ultimately you have different people working with different mindsets, then ultimately it allows a lag in the business. So culture is not just about people. It's about everything in your business. It's the way you think. It's the way your people operate. It's your skill set. It's making sure that your people are taking to market the right value proposition and product set. It's all of those things. And culture is what drives innovation. Culture allows people to attach to your business or detach to your business. And ultimately, it's also what drives your mind share and your market share, right? So for me, it is fundamental and permeates everything that you do.
Thank you, Ziad. Anyone else that wants to make a closing statement? Because we are running towards the end of the time.
So maybe from my side, Nev. Absolutely, completely aligned with everything that's been said around culture, and it is pivotal and at the core of how we drive forward. However, I think often too little time is spent on defining what does digital mean for my organization, because there isn't a one size fits all definition, and there isn't a one size fits all culture, of what it means to think digitally and be digital or going digital. And I think the first thing that's critical is to take a deep dive into your own organization and figure out in a very detailed manner, what does digital mean for my business? And as a result of that, what kind of culture do we need to drive in our business to underpin our definition?
Anyone else? So with that, I just would like to thank our panel members. I think this has been a very interesting, amazing information load, and I've made so many notes, and it just almost feels like there needs to be a follow-on from this. So I'll find maybe a one-on-one call with each of the panel members in a form of a podcast. But I do think that some of this information warrants us going in a little deeper. We just don't have the time right now. One final closing comment from myself before I hand back to Andy is that as a leadership coach and trainer, you know, I fundamentally, when I listen to all of this, I think of the importance of leadership within organizations. And I'm not talking about the top structure. I'm talking about everybody in an organization having leadership awareness, leadership of self, leadership of those around you. And I think that capability is going to be critical in these distributed digital environments that we're talking about, to drive those efficiencies and to get to the levels where we're not only making the technology available, but we're actually utilizing it and making use of it to the best of our abilities. But with that, I'd like to thank everyone. And now I have to multitask because I want to get back to sharing my screen. And then Andy, in the meantime, if I can hand over to you, I'll get the screen back up in the meantime.
Perfect. Thank you, Neville. I just want to use the opportunity to firstly thank all of you panelists for just sharing that the expertise, your insights and your vision. Really, really helpful, I think, for all of us on this call listening in. And a huge congratulations, Neville, for the Digital Insights series. This is number 2, just really a helpful series, and we look forward to the follow-ons. There were a few points that I just wanted to connect dots with before we close, and there are 5, in fact, in terms of why we're trying to work together dealing with this digital transformation and the trends and the opportunities and the enablers you talked about collaboratively as in this ecosystem. So here they are. I think, Kim, you talked to the first 2. They were really around how as an association and in this industry, we work together to help each other with support to continue to navigate COVID, and also to really share knowledge with each other, you know, to reimagine our businesses of the future, our industry of the future. So 2 key things where I think that the network and access to thought leadership is really, really beneficial by being part of an organized ecosystem. The third point, Ziad and Laurent, you both talked to quite extensively, and I'll summarize it, including, you know, having this as an example of accessing the intelligence, the understanding around, you know, what are the products, what are the services that are in high demand, and you need to engage a network to do that research. You need to quantify it and put the fact base down for everybody to plan accordingly. But through this type of collaboration in an industry, you can also access the network of specialist providers who can help you unlock that, whether it's tech providers, and you talked about AI, cloud, cybersecurity, and so we go on. Whether it's the people providers you talked about, Laurent, you know, how do we keep the people in technology? And I think these are the things that you need to leverage by being part of a coordinated effort to grow. The fourth point, and Mark, you talked extensively too, is really around being able to leverage the opportunity and access to this talent pool you talked about. Yes, enabled by, you know, the rollout of broadband, you know, fiber and wireless, but reaching this talent pool that is so rich in South Africa and unlocking potential for further growth domestically and offshore, and participating in innovative initiatives that are using technology to do things differently, to change business models, to reach out to human capital and talents in a very, very different way and unlock value. And the last point, which Laurent, you also talked on, as did some of the others, is by being part of an association and an organization, you can collectively target which markets you need to access. Where do you see future growth coming from? And everybody needs access to that growth. It is in front of us, but we've also got to go after it and be competitive out there. So I wanted to just close off with that and really encourage you on the call to embrace the opportunities that lie ahead of us, to collectively work together to unblock the obstacles and really just be a part of this broad-based, as I think Zio put it so eloquently, leadership drive, business, government, social partner drive on this journey into the digital future. Thanks very much. Just back to you, Neville, to close out formally.
Thank you, Andy. And once again, thank you to our panel members. I personally enjoyed this session and learned a lot. And as I said, I've made lots of notes. And coming out of this session, we will be planning the next 5 webinars that will take us through to the June timeframe. And so we're going to be addressing some of these issues that have been raised in more detail over the coming months. We look forward to having you all back again. And we look forward to working with all of you and to serving you in this market so that South Africa can set itself apart and raise itself to a level where it can compete in the international stage. And that is our objective as BPESA. So thank you very much. And until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.